Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Infanzon. I am the Interim Director for the Community Development Department. Thank you for being here. Thanks for taking the time to learn about this process. It is very critical. It is very important. So this is how is that we're going to take this opportunity, this process. We're going to have a presentation. We're going to address the main provisions, the main elements of the ordinance, and then we're going to go to the questions and answers part of the segment. We're going to have, I believe, plenty of time to go over that, so be patient. Maybe later on, throughout the presentation, you'll be able to get the answer that you want to. And most importantly, I think that it is critical to understand that this is the first community meeting for the landlords. Then we're going to have another one on Wednesday, and then we're going to continue a series of presentations. So we don't expect sometimes for you to get all the questions answered today, maybe not. But we're also going to have documents. We're preparing documents. One of them is going to be a user's guide that is going to walk you through the process, and it's going to be it's going to be online. We're going to have physical copies of it so that you can see it, screenshots, get familiar with the registry. And we're also going to have other documents like the frequently asked questions, so that if for whatever reason we're not able to answer all the questions today, then we'll be able to incorporate that. We also understand that we may have other questions associated to this ordinance, but not necessarily that any provision that may fall under this ordinance related to the statute of California, related to the maybe statute or regulation under the county jurisdiction or federal. So we'll try to address that, right? But our focus is just on the process in order to register, to go through this registry and provide answers related to the ordinance. Okay? So restrooms are downstairs. There is a receptionist downstairs, so that person can help you accessing the restrooms. Anything else? Something else. You probably seen these blank cards that most of you have. That's how we're going to collect questions. So if you have any questions, write it down. We're going to collect these cards throughout the presentation, and then at the end, we're going to address those questions. We're going to try to answer. If the question is the same, we may not read it again, right? Just to save time. But if it is something different, then we'll address it. All right? Okay, just let me briefly introduce some of the individuals that are here. And we have our mayor, Karina Macias, on the back. She'll have a chance to address the audience later on. Thank you for being here, Mayor. We also have our city attorney, Mr. Arnold Glassman, is here. And we have our risk management manager on the back, Marisol Nieto. We have our planning manager, Paul Bollier, out here, and I don't see anybody else from the staff. Anyway, we're gonna begin the presentation, and let me introduce the project manager from the extended team, the implementation team. So, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, great. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for having me. As Sergio explained, my team will be project managing this program. You see a couple of us here. You probably met a few of us outside. So we'll be assisting Sergio and his team in really rolling this out, getting the information to you all, and helping with the system. So let's just go ahead and get started. So what is the Rent Stabilization Ordinance? It is designed to regulate the rental market and provide protections for tenants who are experiencing higher rents, as you all probably already know. When did this go into effect? Well, it was passed by the City Council on November 18th. It became in effect on December 18th, and in the ordinance, it specifies that compliance is required by February 16th. But what does that mean to you all? Before I get into this, let me just explain. Compliance just means that you are registering your unit, your property, and yourself as a landlord in the registration system. And this is a system that will be rolling out. You'll get further information on that in the coming days. But I just want you to keep in mind that this information is coming, and you'll have lots of guidance on it. So the key provisions for you all to think about, to keep in mind, there's an annual rent cap, 3% or CPI, whichever is lower, and this can be increased once every 12 months. So on an annual basis, no more than 3%. There's also a provision to allow for capital improvements to be made to your property, and 50% of that can be passed on to the tenants through a rent increase. Again, additional guidance will come out, but it will be something that goes through the city for approval and review, so that 50% can then flow through to your tenants. Also, you've probably read there were some tenant protections in terms of evictions, in terms of relocation, and non-payment of rent or lease violations. Some of these are valid eviction reasons, and some of them will be called no-fault evictions. So if an owner wants to move back into their property and things of that nature. So who's required to register, and what does this look like? In the coming days, you will be receiving a registration letter. So this is being mailed out to residential property owners. The letter is going to contain information on how to access the system, your login, and then further information will come once you enter the system on how to actually put in your property, put in your information, and complete a registration. It's important to note that if you receive a letter, you have to go in and activate your account. So you probably read that there will be some exemptions for certain properties. Regardless of whether your property or unit is exempt, you still have to go in and activate your account and file for an exemption through the system. I kind of already explained this, but just to reiterate, your letter is going to have a PIN that is assigned specifically to your property, and if you own multiple properties, you will receive a letter for each one and a different PIN. Now when you go in and enter that PIN, all of your properties will be under your one account. So it's not like you have to have different logins or anything. You can claim them all under your one landlord account. Then you'll go in and file for an exemption if that applies to you. And it's important to note that you will file for an exemption prior to officially registering your property, because a registered property goes in separately than an exempted property. So that's just something to make note of. Of course, additional guidance will make that very clear in the guidance documents. Let's talk about some of these exemptions. So rental units that are vacant and unavailable for rent, these are vacant. These are, exempted properties. Rental units that are occupied rent-free, by a family member, by a friend, you kind of get the idea. And then units that are fully owner-occupied. Additional exemptions, properties that have a certificate of occupancy dated after February 1st, 1995. And this is just something that complies with state law. Any unit that is alienable and separate from its title, basically that just means that any property that can be independently bought or sold without being tied to another property. The easiest thing you can think of is like a condo or a townhome. And then any rental unit that has any kind of federal or state subsidy attached to it.
Does that mean Section 8?
It sure does. a residential real property containing no more than 2 rental units in which the owner occupies 1 unit and the other one is for rent. This is kind of the easiest example I can present to you is like a duplex, where you may live in one property and you rent out, or you live on one side and you rent out the other one. And then lastly, any rental unit that is a subdivided interest in a subdivision. And this is also attached to state code, but an example of this would also be like a condo unit. This slide is just basically giving you some information, directing you to the website where there will be lots of information on what these exemptions mean, the FAQs, guidance on actually accessing the system with screenshots, being able to follow step-by-step instructions on registering your property. And of course, you probably have already seen it, but there is a designated phone number and email address specific to this ordinance, questions and comments regarding this ordinance. So if you receive a registration letter and you believe that your property is exempt, please follow the directions that are in the letter. It'll have you go into the account, activate your landlord account, and then there's a user guide in the website to actually walk you through how to submit an exemption. And there will be all the options that we went through today. You'll be able to select what it is. Certain actions in the system will require additional supporting documentation. So just pay attention to what it's asking of you. It has very clear guidance on what it needs from you. Expect your letter sometime next week, starting Monday the 3rd. It should be arriving to your property within that week. It's going to be mailed to the rental unit property, so just keep that in mind. Registering your system this year is free, so we really want to encourage everyone to go in, activate your account, and start that registration process.
How would you send it to the rental property? Why not to the mailing address for the assessor's office?
The information was pulled from the LA County Assessor's Office, and so the best data that we could get on like a mass scale was the rental property addresses.
What if you don't have a mailbox?
Right. I mean, your financial department has our addresses. We pay for a permit.
We'll continue and then we'll address questions at the end. Okay.
Once you've submitted your registration and once you've submitted for an exemption, you will receive an email that will basically let you know that your registration is complete or that your exemption is in process, it's in review. And then you'll get status notifications once something is approved or once your registration is completed. As you all know, this is a mandatory compliance. The city, along with the software vendor, is really going to create a plethora of resources to make sure that this is as seamless as possible. So there will be a help desk connected to the system itself. You'll be able to call if you have any technical issues. Of course, all of the material that we're preparing to give you guidance, answer frequently asked questions. And then of course, you're free to call the phone number or email the designated email for anything that's not covered under any of that material. You can also follow on Facebook and Instagram to get up-to-date information. All right. Thank you all very much.
Okay, so Manuel, so we have some questions here. Manuel is going to read it, and then we're going to go through.
Good evening, everybody. Does this work? Yeah, okay. Okay, so we're gonna get started with questions. If you guys have any more that you would like to submit, I'm gonna go do a round right now.
Read
read the question or collect the form?
Okay, never mind, so we're just gonna go around to that. Cool. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Does it apply to commercial rentals? Does this ordinance apply to commercial rentals?
The data that we pulled was from the LA County Assessor's Office. We're mailing out approximately 8,000 letters. We're only going off what we're provided, and if it is a commercial property, you would still register and you would file exempt with that excuse.
Commercial meaning, are you talking about like industrial or commercial meaning?
Correct. Commercial, industrial, that doesn't have rental units. But remember, you do have commercial units out there that are mixed use. You do have commercial and you do have rental. You could have a house in the back and commercial up front. So just be aware if you're that property owner. Because if we don't register anything and then 2 months later a tenant comes and says, hey, look, they raised my rent, then we find you weren't registered, then we have to go through that whole process.
Okay, if you pay gas and electricity for the tenants, what is the rent increase amount allowed?
The rent increase, regardless of how your tenant application is on file, is 3%. How you manage your utilities is within your agreement with your tenant.
Okay, so legally, can we add utility bills to the tenant?
You have the option, again, in your rental agreement, whether to include utilities or separate from that. But the maximum you can raise is 3%.
Okay, so this individual owns 3 units. 2 were built after 1997 and 1 was built before. Are the 2 units exempt?
The 2 units are exempt, and actually all 3 units are exempt if you're living in one and the other 2 were built after 1995.
Legally, can we add a pet insurance?
Pet insurance is, again, within your agreement with your tenant on how you do that. But again, the maximum you can do is 3% annually for your rent control.
With this ordinance in place, what documents are needed to evict the tenant? Specifically the ones that you need to get from the public housing authority.
So you'll be evicting your tenants for just cause or not just cause, or if they're non-payment, if they're not following the rules, and or if you're going to be moving in to the location and you're going to provide the documents that supports that. They didn't pay the rent. You have your proof. You have your letters that you sent to the tenant saying you owe me rent for January. It's February. The letter went out certified. All those documents are what you're going to provide into the system.
Is it possible to provide an extension for some elderly people who might have properties that they're renting at Henderson Park?
At this time, we're not offering extensions for the registration process. I ask you to please keep an eye on our website. We have our rent stabilization section in there. As we're rolling this out ourselves, be aware, I told you we're working with 8,000 letters here. So we're walking through this with you, and if during this process that we find that there is the need to extend it, we would put that notification on the website.
Okay, so we have a unit that is 530 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, with 7 occupants currently in there. For our research, we should be allowed to add 10% of the rent per occupant. However, would this be allowed under this ordinance?
Okay, for this one, I spoke to the gentleman at the beginning of this meeting, and at this one, I'm going to refer to our attorney to answer this one.
So we have a 530 square foot, 1 bed, 1 bath apartment with 7 occupants. For our research, we should be allowed to add 10% of the rent. Would this be allowed under this ordinance?
Not 10% of the rent. That's per the ordinance. It was 10% per occupant of the rent. 10% of the rent per occupant over the allowed amount. That's what we have.
My recollection and review of the ordinance. Good evening, everyone. I'm Arnold Alvarez Lasco, I'm the city attorney. My recollection is there is not that 10% bonus. It is, yeah, maybe something else.
This is something else. This is City of LA.
You know, and it's important to note, let me say this. The city of Huntington Park is like many other jurisdictions. They are reviewing, considering, adopting these rent stabilization ordinances. In fact, I represent a number of communities here in LA County, and they are, in fact, one of my other clients is going through the process of considering amending their rent stabilization ordinance. Because what we find is we implement a program, and there are tweaks that need to be done. And in that process, again, tonight we're presenting what is currently on the books for Huntington Park, for starting, as shown, was late last year. But I think we appreciate the information that you have. That is for the city of Los Angeles, not what is in our ordinance here in the city of Huntington Park. So, you know, it's something that, again, as time goes forward and there is the implementation of this program, that if there are tweaks that need to be made or considerations and adjustments that need to be made, city staff, everybody up here, will recommend that to our bosses up there for their review and consideration. But as it stands tonight, no, there's not that additional per tenant potential increase. Thank you.
Is there a change of terms we can use for the pass-through fee, for the tenants?
Can you read it again?
So I have it. So for the, will the city provide a change of terms of tenancy for landlords if this is a pass-through fee? So is the RSO a pass-through fee for the city, for the tenants of City of Huntington Park? For example, City of LA, they have an RSO program, and we're able to pass it down to the tenants 50% of the cost. So is Huntington Park gonna copy the same ordinance as City of LA?
So at this time, we don't have that written in our ordinance, like the gentleman just said. As we're learning this and going through the changes, we will update accordingly. So we've taken your question, we'll take that into consideration with the other gentlemen, and then we'll keep moving forward with, as we learn the ordinance and move forward with it.
Okay, there are other questions. Will the PowerPoint be shared or will be online?
Correct. The PowerPoint will be shared online. Again, go to our city website. You have our ordinance there right now. You're going to see, once we kick off at the end of the week, you'll be seeing the link to the rental registration program and other documents that we're compiling as we're walking through this to continue to educate. Because the last thing you want to do, whether let alone you want to do, is get on the phone and all that. We're going to try and provide everything online to answer your questions.
We'll continue with your questions.
How soon will we get the step-by-step guides?
We anticipate getting the step-by-step guides,
Next week.
yeah, early next week is what we're hoping to get them out to you.
If there's some free rent units, are they exempt? Things like the manager unit?
As an example, the manager's unit.
We don't have anything written in there at this point. That would be an exempt status by the property owner, and they would have to show proof that that's their manager, and they're providing it rent-free unless you could come with some other.
And I would agree with that. Usually my voice can carry quite loud, but if you have a manager's unit where there's no rent being charged, or minimum rent being charged, you may include that in your request for exemption, or that unit being exempt from consideration. But again, as indicated, there is not a specific provision in the code currently that addresses the manager unit. But again, all of these questions are excellent, by the way, and thank you, because it will give us here an opportunity to review and evaluate some of the circumstances that may have not been addressed in the first crafting of the ordinance. But yes, but currently there isn't that language. However, you can always include that in your application for exemption.
Okay, and next year's will the letters go out to the management companies?
The letters are going out to the address on file with the LA County Assessor's Office. So that's the only thing we have to go by.
She said mailing address, the property address, not a mailing address.
Property address, and so, she may have said that, so, please disregard that. It will go out to the property, to the address on file with the county assessor's office.
Mailing address?
Where your tax bill goes, right?
Yes, correct.
No.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
tax bill.
the property owner. Property owner.
Correct. Where he said where the tax bill
So
goes.
the tax bill goes.
Yes, sure.
Are properties belonging to a trust exempt?
No properties with, a trust and LLC are exempt, still registers.
If a unit is subsidized by Section 8, at the moment, do we apply for an exemption?
Currently, if that's how you have it registered, you would fill it out as accordingly and choose the exempt, and provide that documentation as such.
So if there's 14 units and half of those are Section 8, it's those 7 that you would, as exempt, correct?
Correct, and you'd still register all 14, but
Of course.
7 would be exempt
Gotcha.
with the documentation.
Gotcha.
For exemption purposes, do all units need to be subsidized? For example, like if there's six, they're not over.
Okay.
No, I mean, based on the requirements, right? So if it's gonna be justified because it's subsidized or because it's only 2 units or whatever was described right here, do we need to go over that again? Those requirements? One more time? No. Okay, so what are the exempt conditions for the number?
So if it's a unit, where there's 2 units on the property and the owner lives in one and the other one is a rental, you do not have to register, but you do have to register it exempt for that reason. Yeah, you will require to have the certificate of occupancy. The other exemption, if the property is built after February 1st, 1995, regardless of how many units are on the property.
Subsidized by the federal government or off the market by 24 months.
Correct. So the subsidization, the Section 8, anything related to the government funding or assistance that you're getting, all those documents are documents that you would upload into the system. In your drop-down menu, you would choose the exemption for that.
Okay, so this is just an example that he wrote on here. So what if a unit that was not initially subsidized then becomes an applicant with Section 8? When would one be able to register for that?
You can go into the system and update the system at that time that you know about it. You don't have to wait for the end of next year to fix it. You can always update the system. It could be the same that you rent it, you register it today as vacant. 3 months from now, you're gonna get a person who's gonna come in and rent it. You're not gonna wait 9 more months to register it. You'll go into the system and change the exemption at that time.
Is there a fee for the registration, and will there be a fee next year?
Currently, at this time, there's not a fee for the registration. We anticipate a fee next year. We don't know what that looks like at this point. We're trying to work with all the properties we have, and I ask you to just, as next year comes around, and if we do identify that fee amount and what it is, you will be notified as the property owners at that time.
Do we have to move tenants in and out of the portal?
In and out of the what?
Of the portal?
So that's my question. So there are about 10 cities in the county of LA that participate in the RSO program. Some of them, like Pasadena, where we have to move tenants in and out of their system because we have to register them. So we have to put an application in, upload the lease, and do everything. Every time somebody moves out, we have to let the city know. That they move in, we have to let the city know.
Understood.
And the same thing goes for 3-day notices. Like for City of Inglewood, we want to evict someone, we have to upload our 3-day notices into the city portal. If we fail to do so, our eviction is not valid. It's HP doing the same thing.
Correct. All documentation needs to go into the system.
So leases, moving in and moving out, and 3-day notices.
Correct.
And then also in Pasadena, they have a separate email to report evictions outside of the system. Will we have to do that here as well?
We'll answer that question at the end.
What is the CPI period?
CPI period is measured, ongoing. He's saying the period. How long is, if I'm understanding the question right, how long is the current CPI index? Notified whether you want 3% or the current CPI. Currently, if you do your rental increase at 3%, in 2 months from now, the CPI drops below that. We're not gonna go in and adjust anything, you're at that 3% for the year. Then when you register at December 30th of the following year, it's 3% or CPI, whichever one's lower.
And it is true, I mean, an example of this question, because the cycle that follows the CPI is from April to April. I mean, from April to March, at the end of March. So we'll know in April about the next CPI for the next year. So we'll probably have to make the adjustment at one point and consolidate that information, right? You see, for us, the end of the deadline to register for the next year is December 30th. We'll go with a calendar day versus a fiscal year. So we'll probably have to adjust that so that we can match that, or we have something in place that makes sense. Because what if it drops below that, right? If it goes up, then no problem, but if it drops below that 3%, then that will create an issue.
Will that information be posted up on the website regularly?
Yeah.
And so now.
We'll talk about it. Okay, we'll address all the information that is gonna be on the website so that everybody feels good.
As it stands right now, it's 3% until April comes around and you guys post something different on the website.
Correct. For the registration for December 30th deadline of next year.
What's this? Can you play the website? What is your website?
We'll provide that.
Does the rec freeze from the state of emergency, the one for the LA County fires, take effect in Huntington Park?
It does not apply for Huntington Park.
I currently have a rental dwelling permit with the city. Do I have to re-register?
Yes, you do have to, if you have a current rental permit, business license for a rental permit, I'm understanding that right, all property owners are supposed to register with the city with their rental units.
I asked that question, I'm sorry. So does the new RSL registration basically negate the previous? Are we just doing those now, or how does that?
We don't have any RSO.
Or, the new rent stabilization ordinance? The registration pursuant to that, now do I now register from using that from now on versus the old school rental process where I fill out the form and send it in? Sure.
Correct. You must register on the website, correct.
Thank you.
If I want the tenant to pay 50% of an upgrade, is there some sort of project amount or projected amount that we will need to charge the tenant?
So as a property owner, you have the ability to share that cost with your tenants over an amortization period of 5 years, but that is something that is gonna be applicable to the structure to promote the longevity of the structure. Not, I'm gonna go in and change the bathtub and toilet, the general wear and tear of faucets, the kitchen cabinets are getting old, something like new heating units, new plumbing units throughout the complex, something that's gonna benefit the structure for longevity.
I'm sorry.
What about electrical?
Electrical is one of them, yes.
Okay.
I asked that question. Is there a cap? Is there a monetary value that we can, ask the tenant?
Yeah, we don't have anything in our ordinance that limits that right now, but we will ask for some documentation, what that looks like, where you're getting that cost, what that cost estimate is, so that when that is input into the system and a tenant is discussing it with us, that we have that proof to better support both sides of it.
Okay, if I select to evict without cause and waive the last 2 months, does the tenant have to complain?
One more time?
So if I waive, if I select to evict the tenant without cause and waive the last 2 months, does the tenant have to accept my eviction?
It depends what the reason you're evicting for just cause. Am I moving in there, or am I gonna be demolishing the building? Am I gonna be redoing the whole building, evicting my tenant and tenants for a long period of time, and I do not know when that is going to be ready, and I'm gonna evict for some unknown period of time.
Is he yes?
Excuse me?
Then yes?
Is that a yes?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, well, okay, so let's understand this. With no cost, so at no fault, if the tenant is not at fault, you cannot select to evict them and give them the 2 months free. You can't. It has to be, the tenant has to be at fault. It has to be responsible, breach of contract or anything else, right? Violation of the contract agreement that you have. But if you decide one day, well, you know, I'm just gonna get rid of this person, that is not possible. It has to be according.
I think he's saying a buyout agreement. Does the city have a limit of the buyout? If I want to buy you out, cash for keys, the city could say, you have to pay the tenant 3 months worth of rent.
We do not have that. If you're going to evict, like I said, it's gotta be for due diligence of what you're doing for that property. You know, are you, like I said, I'll reiterate again, are we doing a full reconstruction project? And I'm not gonna rent that property out anymore because I'm gonna have a family member move in, I'm gonna move in, or I'm gonna evict because I'm gonna work on a construction project that's gonna take me well over a year because I don't have the money. And I don't have the money, then yes, you do have that opportunity.
The ordinance says 2 months.
Excuse me?
The ordinance
For
says 2 months.
For 2 months pay.
Correct.
Correct. She was asking about the right to be able to. So in that case, you have two options. You can allow that tenant to live there 2 months free of rent, or you can give them that due date and give them 2 months worth of rent. Those are your two options. Sorry if I misunderstood it.
Does it have to go through the city? Like, we need to notify the city with the document that we did a buyout agreement?
Yes.
Well, I'm pretty sure this has been answered already. Is there a grace period for the registration process?
No, that was answered. At this time, it's not, like I said, just pay attention, keep checking in on our website. As we walk through this with you, we'll provide our updates accordingly.
What about business licenses?
As it stands right now, property owners are supposed to have had a business license for their properties. We know they don't have that. We know that. You may not have known, right? So we're gonna walk through that. At this time, we're looking at getting the registration done. Let's focus on step one. Let's get the properties registered. And maybe phase two, we look at closing out that gap about the rental properties and that business license that's associated with it.
And are there plans, or will the city be able to update the registration website in regards to like the business license?
Yes, again, I implore you all to please look at the website. You can go into our website, City of Huntington Park, drill down on the left-hand side, and you'll come down to our rent stabilization. As our notifications are known, we will update that website continuously. Again, we're not here to go out and issue citations. That's not what our goal here is. We've created a program, rental stabilization. And like I said, we get everything registered. Yeah, the next phase may be the business license. Again, we give notifications, we send the letters out, and give the opportunity for everyone to participate.
Okay, I have a unit in the back of my house. It has one living room, one kitchen, one room, and a bathroom. What do I need to know in regards to the ordinance if I choose to rent it?
If you, and if you live on the property at that location, you know, you are exempt because you're living at that as the property owner and have lived there as the property owner. So you would register that property and choose the exemption under that status.
Okay, what documents do I need to get in order to petition for an exemption, if you don't have COC?
So in the website itself, you're gonna have a number of options for exemptions. So you're looking for your certificate of occupancy, certificate of construction, I'm assuming that's what it is. And if you do not have that, I ask you to come to the city and apply for a public records request through the city clerk's office. And whatever we have on file, that we can share that with you.
So I didn't have it. They only gave me a copy of the permit. Would that be sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Will you or somebody with the city be able to help us with the forms?
I'm not too sure what the forms are. Everything is online. I mean,
Like
it's,
the notices, like the draft notices, would you give us draft notices that we could share with the tenants, right? Because we have to do notices. to the
Sure.
tenants. That's what I was asking about.
so the answer to your question is, we will create a template, a basic template for you to share with your tenants. That way we're not having 8,000 different property owners sharing something different, right? So we want to partner together so that we're all sharing the same information.
When will you have that?
We will be having something like that as early as next week, when the letters go out.
And what I need to renew my exemption every year?
Yes, the exemption's gotta be up to, every year you gotta register your property, no matter whether it's exemption or not. Oh, let me correct myself. Depending on the exemption, what the exemption is for. You may or may not, the exemption is, I don't have a property here, it was never a rental. So no, you're not gonna go out back in and re-register every year, especially when we start talking about, somebody asks, is there gonna be a fee? Last thing you want to do is start charging a fee to a family who doesn't have a rental property.
Okay. We are looking to increase the rent as of April 1st, the 3% maximum. Would we need to send a letter 30 days before?
You do have to notify your tenants, and you also want to put the letter into the system, the rental registration, also for your support, so that a year from now, let's say, you want to raise your rent again, we can see what your past history is and what your current history is to support the 3% if you're choosing to raise your rent for that tenant.
Also, before the letters go out from the city of HP, would one be able to change the mailing address on it from the original?
Unfortunately, at this time, no, the data mining that we did already, the letters are already created, so we're going to be drafting those and sending them in. Let me add something to that. So something could have changed between the time we pulled our data to now, right? It's not going to be 8,000 people, but we may have that. So you were given an email address and a phone number. Please feel free to use that, contact us, let us know, so that when we do get those runoffs, that we can make sure we capture the right letter at the right address.
So if we don't get the letter in the mail for a myriad of reasons, right? Was there a time frame? Like we haven't gotten this letter yet, to reach out to you guys?
Correct.
What is that time frame that we should reach out? If we don't-
We'll let you know in a minute.
Okay.
Okay. If your unit is exempt, do you need to provide notice to your tenant? Is exempt from the renters.
I'll ask.
If your rental unit is exempt, do you need to provide notice to your tenants?
I do not believe you do, no. My recollection of the ordinance does not require that notice. So it's a process between the city and the property owner.
I mean, we're thinking that, best practice, you're gonna go through the process. If you're exempt, you wanna notify everybody that you're exempt, right? And you wanna post something, either the response from the city any type of notification that you're gonna get, and you're gonna be able to notify it. Otherwise, we'll get your tenants coming to the city saying, well, the owner has not raised it, right? Because he hasn't posted anything on the common areas, or hasn't provided any documentation to us. So we'll probably say yes. Yes, it will be great to provide that notification to the tenants so that they feel good about it.
Are we gonna get certificates of registry like City of LA that we post in the common areas?
You're gonna get yes.
And it would say registered units, if you properties 10 units, registered 9, exception 1? Would it have
will
that
something.
specific?
It will have a notification. We'll let you know how it works.
If these are outdoor units, will something still need to be posted if it's, if these are like little casitas, it's not like a building, I don't know.
So if you don't have the opportunity to post something on the property, the last thing is you do a certified letter mailing it to that address, so you have proof that it was served.
Okay, so this person is asking if they're fine, like what they did. So they gave a 3-month notice as a courtesy on November 1st, 2024, that they will be raising the rents at 8.9%, the LA County permitted one. And it goes into effect February 1st, 2025. Since they gave the tenants notice on November 1st, which was prior to the vote of the law, are they exempt or are they good?
As the ordinance states, any increase in rent is only allowable 3% after December 19th, whether we gave them notification prior to that it's gonna happen after the fact or not. That's just where the ordinance is, and that's how it's read.
Okay, so the recommendation is that if for whatever reason January 1st came around and you decided, you went with a notice, right, and you increased it 10%, work with, your tenants to adjust that throughout the next 2 or 3 months, or if you wanna give the money back, whatever you wanna do, so that we can accommodate that. We have 2 questions that.
I have 2 questions. If you can't hear me, let me know. I don't think I'll need the microphone. The first question is my understanding that if the laws state mandated, are all cities required to follow? Well, the state mandate is not a requirement that every local jurisdiction must impose a rent stabilization ordinance. However, if a local jurisdiction decides to implement a rent stabilization ordinance, they must be in compliance with the state laws, with the provisions of the state legislature. So it's not required that every local jurisdiction must adopt a rent stabilization ordinance, but if the situation here in Huntington Park, we have to make sure that it's in compliance with the state law. The second question is, if LA County rent increase is about 8%, why would we be required to only raise 3% if the city falls within LA County? The LA County rent stabilization ordinance applies to those properties within unincorporated areas of the county. So we are an incorporated city within Los Angeles County, but the city is not governed by the LA County regulations because we're not unincorporated, we're part of the incorporated cities within LA County.
Thank you, Paul. I'm going to address a couple of issues, and then we'll move to additional questions, hoping that you're not going to have any more questions. But one thing, documentation. All the documents that we need to get ready. So, for instance, I'm going to repeat that, the frequently asked questions, the user's guide. We're going to continue with these meetings. A flyer with information about when are we going to have these meetings. We're going to add a kiosk outside City Hall, so when you come or anybody can get this information that we're going to prepare to you. The PowerPoint presentations, the email address that we're gonna utilize, the phone number that we're gonna use for this program. All of that information is gonna be on the website of the city. And we are anticipating to have this ready by next week, even though we already have most of the information we're collecting, these documents, they're gonna be ready pretty soon. One thing that I encourage you to do is to leave your email, because we communicate with you every Friday. We send an electronic newsletter to all the residents. And maybe we want to start building that database with the property owners so that you are at first hand receiving this information. Any changes, we're going to utilize that same address, email address, to send you the information and to keep you informed. So we are not there yet, but we are almost ready to launch this. The information online is going to be accessible. This the software company that we are utilizing, you can go right now, check probably Santana, Pasadena, Palos Verdes, Pico Rivera. Those are the cities that are around here. It's the same company. They're very good. So the process, when you open the registry, once you get your registration letter, there's going to be a PIN associated to your parcel number. You're going to be able to go to the process, and then there's going to be a menu, a drop-down menu, right? So if you're exempt, you'll be able to see why, under which category you are exempt. And then if you click on one of them, then there's going to ask you, okay, what are the documents that you have in order to support that exempt part of it, right? And then for the documents, the notifications, the no reply, everything else, those documents are built into this registry. And as you go through the process, the steps, you'll see the instructions, you'll see the drop-down menu, and you click, and then you move forward until finally you're able to complete the process. If for whatever reason it's under review, whatever it is that we need to do, you're gonna get a notification. There is a no reply email that you're gonna get stating, we're on the process. We're about to complete this, so you're under review. The same thing with this. Today we're working with the implementation team in terms of the protocols, the policies and procedures that we're gonna create that have to be created. And so, like for instance, right, you wanna share the 50% of any expenditures on, remodeling or whatever you have to do that fulfills, the requirement. Then there's going to be a process, and it's going to stay there. These are the documents that we are going to be able to accept, and then it's going to be stated very, very articulated, so there is no questions in terms of what you need to do. The notifications, the same thing, and I'm going to repeat it. It's RSO, right? It's not RSP. It's RSO. RSO, Rent Stabilization Ordinance, the first letter, at hbca.gov. So far this morning, we didn't have any questions through the email. You still have questions, please send it to us. What we're going to do is we are categorizing classifying all the questions into different sections or areas, and then we're going to provide, if it is a simple answer and it is already included on one of the frequently asked questions, then we're just going to send you the document as soon as possible. And believe me, we already have that. We are just going to these community meetings to collect more information, to gather more questions, and we hope that when we finish on Wednesday, the first round of meetings, we'll be able to have a better understanding of anything that we probably missed.
What was that email again? RSO?
RSO at HBCA. Oh. But that's the number. Oh, it's right there. Can you see it? I don't know. Take a picture. Oh, that's true. See, that's why they they're the implementation team because they can make things happen. I didn't know what to do, so thank you, Serna. And something else that is very critical and very important is that we can have that open communication, right, between landlords, city. This is something new. We know that we need to make adjustments, and we're going to make it. As a matter of fact, I mean, even though we have the February 16 deadline, and Paul already mentioned that at this point we don't have an extension, but we're recommending, and we need to bring it to the legislative body, which is the city council, to see if we can ask for that extension so that we can eventually fulfill the goal of registering everybody that has to register. So keep informed by going to the website, by making sure that if you don't get an RSO email from this address within the next 3 or 4 days, you don't receive the letter, then probably this email went somewhere else, or spam or somewhere else. So make sure that you go over and make sure that it is clear and we don't have that problem. Time frame, someone mentioned over here about the time frame to contact the city. So the process is embedded into the system, right? So the ordinance calls for certain notifications, and the process in order for the city to review those sanctions, to review the request from you, the 50% share, and any other provisions included on the ordinance is going to be included on the protocol. It's going to be included on the modules, whatever we create. You're just going to click here in the evictions, and all the information is going to be there. And then you'll find the templates, you'll find the notices, you'll find whatever we are going to create to incorporate into this process. I think that in terms of, there's one more question here about if we have any litigation related, currently have any litigation related to the RSO. No, we don't have any at this point. And then there's one more question about how to register. We don't have the access to the registry right now because it's coming together. They're doing the configuration as we speak, but we hope that by our goal, I don't know if I said this or not, but the goal is to go live this weekend. Okay, so that's the goal, and so far we have the parameters to make it happen. If that's the case, everybody here and the rest of the city, through the email system that we have and through social media, is going to be notified. And then you're going to receive the letter that is going to give you the information in order to start the registry. You have anything to add, Serna? And so we can start? No? Ready? Anything? No? Okay. So Paul, anything? No?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we have an opportunity to not to elaborate, just to go to the point, right? Otherwise, we'll be here tonight. Are you okay with it, or you still want that card to come through? The challenge truly is that if it is a good question, we may not have it, and then we need to go to the recordings, and that's the issue,
I have a quick question. I'm trying to figure out how did the city of Huntington Park come up with a 3% cap on rent increase when the state of California in 2019 already had one in place in the state of California? Right. That's my first question. My second question regarding that is that fire insurance is up, property taxes go up, water is up. I could go on, and that's above the 3%. You know, and I'm just trying to figure out, like, where did the 3% come from?
Labor, materials.
Thank you, ma'am. The 3% or CPI is in the ordinance. If you register and there's a request to have additional amounts, there is a process that you file to the Community Development Department. They will review and evaluate and consider that request. Not that it's guaranteed, but you have to provide the necessary documentation, demonstration that there are these additional amounts above and beyond the 3% for CPI.
When is the application going to be available to do that? The application, when is the rent adjustment application going to be available for the city of Huntington Park?
I just mentioned that we're planning to go live this weekend.
Perfect.
Okay?
And I see that in many ordinances where if you can establish an unusual set of circumstances where there's additional amounts, you can make that application.
And is the max going to be 8%?
No, that 8% is the county.
Yeah, because I was looking at their rent application for adjustment. The max is 8%. Like for
The ordinance doesn't call for a max amount, but maybe that's something that is gonna be revisited.
so as of right now, there's no max. So when the application comes out like this weekend, there's no max unless I can prove that I don't have like a good return, right? Okay.
But that's through an application
Yes.
process,
Yes.
not a guarantee process.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, but that's still not answering my question.
How did you get to the?
City of Huntington Park come up with capping at 3%?
Oh.
When in the United States, inflation is at 21%. Now with these fires, building material, all these rising costs is beyond 3%. So I just want to know, like, what is the reasoning and how does that formula, how is that formulated at 3%? When the state of California already has one in place?
Well, that's a more difficult question for me to respond to, and for staff to respond to. I'm not quite sure if we, how we get 3%.
I just want to briefly elaborate into this. The 3% is, as of right now, if you check the other rent stabilization ordinances around the area, that's about the average. So that's how we came up with this number. And it wasn't necessarily, that it was me or it was just a study and analysis of the rent increase, the rent adjustments based on other rent stabilizations of the region. That's how we came up with the 3%. So again, right, we're not capturing this information. That's why we asked if you could do the blank cards, because that way we can track it.
I did, but you didn't answer it.
What was your question?
My question is comment and question. One, it feels honestly, this is being handled kind of haphazardly, like, well, we're doing it as we go. I don't know, why weren't there any like town halls that were conducted to get input from the community, from both your tenants and owners? Because it feels really one-sided, and I understand from my research that the city is within legal parameters to enact this kind of ordinance. But we just had an election. Why wasn't this put on the ballot so that it's a fair input from everybody? And it may turn out that, hey, it does turn out that yes, voters say yes, we want rent control, but at least it would be conducted in a fair manner.
Okay.
So I can understand her frustration, because it is true. I'm being put in a position where my hands feel tied, where I can't be nice anymore. I haven't raised my rent for several years, okay? My rent is under market. And now I have to raise rent every year because I need to account for these costs that she talked about. I'm almost done, excuse me.
Yeah.
And as soon as this current tenant leaves, I have to raise my rent by several $100s, because I have to account for reserves for property taxes that go up every year. Everything is going up, unexpected repairs, maintenance to the property, and it seems like the city's telling me what to do with my property when the city doesn't own it, the city doesn't pay for it, and it feels really unfair that it was implemented in this manner.
Thank you for the comments. I just want to add the following, there is a process within the ordinance. If you, based on the numbers, after you come up with all the different, amounts that you have to pay here, there, and then if it is not enough to stabilize the market and to provide a fair, obviously, revenue or return, then there is a process. Please utilize the process, because that's why we have it on the ordinance.
But the question is, why weren't we notified about?
That's what I can tell you right now.
Then I want to answer that question.
So we are here truly to provide answers to the questions that you formulate regarding the registry. I would like to address, many other questions and be able to provide and stay here the entire night discussing why we did this or why we didn't do that. But right now what we have in front of us is a registry process. We are providing, the information that you need to have in order to go through this. Feel free to address these through the proper channels, right? You may want to talk to, schedule a meeting with me any other time. You may want to schedule a meeting with the city manager, discuss this, because again, this is, can I say that is to a certain extent, it's a living document that may be adjusted, that we may, probably modify so that it's better for everybody, and then it works better for everybody. But again, the idea and the goal of this ordinance, as many other policies that the city creates and adopts, is for the benefit of everybody and to balance this market in this case. So I truly appreciate the questions. I truly appreciate, the comments. At this point, that's what we can provide to you in terms of the process. Truly, we cannot go back, right? So you have an opportunity to address the issues that you are not comfortable, that you are not okay with, to the proper channels. You have an opportunity within the ordinance to address this and request not the 3%, but maybe 5%, 6%, 7%. As soon as you document, you justify it, then we'll be able to address it and discuss it.
Before we go back to further questions, I think it's right. I wouldn't call on the mayor, but she stood up and she's nodded that she'd like to say a few words. Is that correct, Mayor? This time, Mayor Macias, who's present tonight, has heard all your questions and heard all your concerns, and we'll turn the microphone over to the mayor.
Thank you, Arnold. Appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Karina Macias, Mayor of the City of Huntington Park. I understand your frustration. I want to apologize as mayor. I reiterated with my other members of the council to have town hall meetings before. They didn't budge. So I'm going to be very honest with that. They can't say that, I will. So I tried my best to make sure that we had town halls before to hear from tenants, but also property owners. Many of you live in the city, have owned properties for many years. I want to make sure that we're fair with everybody. So I want to be fair, and I want to be obviously transparent, that my rest of my, I can only speak for another colleague of mine that did support my idea, Councilmember Castillo. I can't speak for the rest. Because I did reiterate that to the city manager, that we needed to have town halls before, so that we can hear from everyone, and probably have a more equitable ordinance, right? So we're now facing a situation where we are kind of, and I want to ask for patience for our staff and our directors. They're here, they have had our meetings in both Spanish and English, and they want to make sure that they provide the information, but they're also working with something that is very new. We have never had this before in the city of Huntington Park. It is important, obviously, to give some relief to our tenants, but it's also very important to make sure that we include all of you in that process. So I can't say if that percentage is going to change anytime soon, but I wanted to make sure and be transparent because I knew those questions were going to be asked, and I am okay being transparent in the sense that, having town halls before was not supported. So I want to make sure that as we move forward with this, that we have that transparent conversation, that we make sure that we take your considerations. I can't say, like I said, it's gonna change, but it is a living document. It's gonna be a living document because we have to make sure that we are as fair to tenants, to give them some relief, but also, as many of you mentioned, things go up. I know you have a lot of expenses, property taxes, etc. And this is me as a tenant. I don't own property, but I try to put myself in your shoes to make sure that we can provide as much as information so that we can help you throughout the process. So just want to make sure and say that tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. She's going to be here. And I just want to let you know that we as staff, our commitment is just to make sure that we address your concerns, we address your requests to the best of our abilities and capacity, and that's what we're planning on doing. So you may think that it's not ready. We are just not telling you exactly what's going to happen because we have been working on this for a while. We know that it's going to be ready and it's going to be good. We just don't want to put it out and tell you, oh yeah, tomorrow it's going to be up and running, when in reality, it's a lot of work, but I think it's going to be good. And the process is going to be there. You're going to be able to go through it, navigate, and find out that there are going to be less questions than the ones that you may probably have right now. The most important thing is that we have that communication open, that you understand that we have an opportunity to address your issues. You want to talk to me, you can come, you can schedule a meeting, we'll address it. And then obviously the existing of the process, the provision provided by the ordinance. And with that, unless anybody has a comment card, we're gonna conclude the meeting.
This gentleman's been raising his hand all night, so I think.
Yeah, but he already asked like, I don't know how many questions without a car.
We're gonna allow these last two questions.
Up to 7 here.
Okay.
We're gonna allow these last two questions. And then.
Okay.
And then we can entertain questions, Paul, Serona, myself, Mr. Glassman will be here. If you have other questions, then we'll be more than happy.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, well, you have a class or somewhere where we can, or someone that's gonna be able to help us out, we're on a laptop and we don't understand this, where do we do that?
I'm sorry?
Like
Workshop.
Like a workshop or something to fill out?
Yes, yeah.
You are doing
Once the register is up, once the register is up and running, remember I mentioned it, we're gonna continue with these workshops. So we hope that this is gonna go live this coming Friday. Next week, we're having another workshop, so if it is up and running, we'll be able to demonstrate that. You're going to have the user's guide that is going to have screenshots of step by step.
Oh.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank everyone for putting this together. And I'm a daughter of parents that purchased properties 40 years ago. And I am their living legacy in inheriting the property. So I have a lot of love, a lot of care for my mother's tenants. And so, one of the things a question that I have is, why are properties that were built after 1995 exempt from rent stabilization, and properties, the people that helped build the city are mandated to have a rent cap? I mean, that just seems so unfair. And I'm looking at the audience; it's pretty empty. And I honestly believe it's because there's a lot of landlords that don't even know what is happening. They're old school. They're not informed of what is going on.
It's true.
Only because my mom is getting older, I'm getting involved in helping her renovate her properties. I literally was on a Zoom appointment, face up, waist up, in an appointment where I'm literally painting. Here's my jeans, helping to cut costs. So it seems very one-sided. And and it's the landlords, the property owners. Years ago that have poured the heart and soul into the city.
Ma'am, is there a question
Yes.
coming up? Because
Yeah.
we've
So,
heard her statement,
okay.
the same statement
Yes.
a couple of times. So is there a question?
Well, why are properties of 1995 after exempt, and those that,
And that's what the state legislature
that,
established.
it was just implemented.
It is a state mandate. We cannot, that is one of the provisions
On their own
from the
benefit.
state that we need to respect.
It's a law
We
called
just couldn't.
And-
Yes, what's the name of the law? Housing, coastal.
Costa-Hawkins law.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Right, but it was,
Yeah, that's why we,
We're gonna wrap it up. We had said earlier, two more questions. I think it's, Pam, you
I
got the
really
last
do have
question.
two quick questions. The first question is, you said they're not gonna extend, I've heard this a couple of times, they're not gonna extend the deadline for registration. However, the ordinance says that we have 60 days to do it, but if we don't have the work to register it until February 1st, are we still going to get 60 days to register them?
so, the reason I cannot tell you that we're gonna extend it, because the legislative body is the one that can confirm that, adopt that, approve that. So, we already are recommending to the legislative body, to the city council, to consider the extension, okay? And I believe it's gonna be granted given the circumstances. It's just that officially, I'm not authorized to say, I'll give you 60 more days. But our strong recommendation to the city council is to extend it. And I think that the reason we have to do it is because it's on the ordinance, and we need to do it via resolution or we're discussing that, but yeah, we're strongly recommending to extend I just hope that's gonna be the case, and I think that's gonna be the case, okay?
Okay, my other quick question is, something was mentioned about a fair return for our investment. If we are not getting a fair return right now, is there you said there's a process to go through so we won't be charged or held accountable to that 3%?
So, again, I invite you to go through the ordinance. It's a very easy reading. I don't think it's that complicated, and it's very stipulated right there that you have an opportunity to request so that you can have that fair return, right? But there are steps that you have to follow, and there are documents that you need to submit. And once this goes live, you'll see that we'll have that in place, and we'll be able to give you a list of the documents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for being here.
Where do we see
Always
this?
available.
Do you see this somewhere online? Like, is it on YouTube?
Yeah, this is, oh yeah, I forgot. This is gonna be on YouTube and Facebook.
When?
And then tomorrow, Katia?
It's already on Facebook now,
Okay.
and I will post it on YouTube tonight.
Under Huntington Park.
Yeah,
City
City
of
of Huntington Park.
YouTube.
Just go the City of Huntington Park YouTube channel. It's gonna be there for YouTube, and then Facebook. And we have other presentations, and we're gonna continue uploading more as we
Facebook
continue
also,
having
City of
information.
Huntington Park. Is the site
Yes.
Facebook? City of
Everything is City of
Huntington
Huntington Park. You can go to Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube under City of Huntington Park. Thank you very much for being here. We truly appreciate it. Mr. Glassman will be here for a little bit.